What would you choose if you had the resources to change a nation's future? Stick with old systems that favor the few, or take a bold risk that redefines a generation? Namibia's new president has just made her choice, and stunned even the so-called first world nations, which pride themselves on progress. While Western countries burden their students with hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, Namibia is doing the unthinkable. President Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah has announced that starting in 2026, higher education will be free for all students at Namibia's public universities and technical colleges. No registration fees, no tuition. But why did she take this historic step? How did it happen? Who will benefit? And could this completely transform Namibia's education system and economic future? In this video, let's find out. Before President Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah's historic announcement shook the nation, Namibia already stood out among its African neighbors for one major reason. It provided free primary and secondary education at public schools. But free only went so far. Parents still bore heavy hidden costs, paying for school uniforms, textbooks, hostel accommodations, exam fees, and school supplies. Even these extras were enough for poor and rural families to block consistent access to education. And when it came to higher education, the door slammed even harder. Students attending the University of Namibia or the Namibia University of Science and Technology faced steep tuition fees, registration costs, and living expenses. Each year, thousands of dollars were needed just to stay enrolled. While the Namibian Student Financial Assistance Fund offered some loans and grants, it wasn't nearly enough. Many young Namibians, especially from isolated rural communities, simply couldn't afford to dream beyond high school. Those who braved the system often graduated with crippling debts. Others abandoned their studies altogether, and another generation was locked out of economic mobility. The result was tragic but predictable. Persistent youth unemployment, stubborn poverty rates, and a growing sense of hopelessness. Namibia's bright, talented youth were being sidelined, not by a lack of ambition, but by the high price of opportunity. And that's precisely the system President Nandi-Ndaitwah set out to dismantle. On a cool Thursday evening in Windhoek, during her very first State of the Nation address, President Nandi-Ndaitwah delivered a thunderclap announcement that would change everything. She said, "From the next academic year, commencing 2026, tertiary education will become 100% subsidized by the government." For a moment, the chamber fell silent. Then came the gasps, and then the roaring applause. Across the country, social media lit up. Videos of students celebrating on campuses spread like wildfire. For a generation that had grown up chanting slogans about educational justice, it felt almost surreal. The fees must fall dream, once dismissed as naive, had finally materialized. But this wasn't just a symbolic gesture. The plan was concrete. Tuition and registration fees at all public universities and technical training colleges would be wiped out. Students would only be responsible for personal living expenses, a burden far lighter than before. President Nandi-Ndaitwah made it clear, this was the result of years of youth activism, grassroots organizing, and national debate. She directly referenced the student movements that had fought so hard, promising, "We have heard your cries. The fees have fallen." The announcement sent shockwaves across Namibia and beyond. For the first time in the nation's history, the gates of higher education would be thrown wide open. Under the new policy, every undergraduate student attending a public university or vocational training center would have their tuition and registration fees fully subsidized by the state. No longer would financial barriers determine who could study and who could not. Education, once an expensive dream for many, was now becoming a guaranteed right. The beneficiaries of this policy were not the wealthy elite who already had access to private schools and foreign universities. The real winners were the low-income and middle-income families scattered across Namibia's towns and villages, the children of farmers, factory workers, nurses, and public servants. These were the students most likely to have their futures cut short by financial pressure. Now, with cost removed from the equation, they would have a clear, unblocked path to university degrees, diplomas, and technical certifications. It was a move aimed at breaking the cycle of generational poverty and injecting fresh energy into every sector of the Namibian economy. But the vision didn't stop at universities alone. For the first time, vocational and technical training programs would be elevated to equal importance. For years, Namibia's skilled trades, the electricians, the welders, the carpenters, had been overlooked in favor of white-collar careers. That neglect had created gaps across industries that desperately needed rebuilding, especially in mining, construction, and renewable energy. By funding vocational centers, the government wasn't just democratizing education. It was redesigning the economy from the ground up. Thousands of young Namibians, who might never have imagined a path to economic independence, would now be equipped with world-class skills to rebuild and modernize their country. Before we continue further, tell us, are you enjoying the video? If yes, please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black Africa. Let's continue now. Crucially, the funding model behind this transformation was not reckless. Namibia's new leadership was acutely aware of the risks of ballooning national debt or crashing future budgets under the weight of unchecked spending. Instead of announcing an open-ended welfare program, the government proposed a smarter, more surgical strategy. Existing education subsidies would be expanded and redirected. Administrative costs at NSFAF, or the Namibia Students' Financial Assistance Fund, historically plagued by inefficiency, would be slashed and streamlined. Future budgets would prioritize education funding as a strategic investment, not a discretionary expense. Every dollar spent was to be seen as a seed for future growth, not a charity handout. The overarching goal was ambitious but clear: mass access to education without triggering a mass fiscal collapse. Namibia wasn't trying to copy European welfare models blindly. It was building a uniquely African model, one rooted in pragmatism, sustainability, and national sovereignty. Although some details regarding postgraduate education funding were still under negotiation, the overall framework marked a revolutionary shift in Namibia's social contract. Higher education was no longer to be treated as a private luxury reserved for the wealthy few. It would become a public good, a national right, a birthright, a new pillar of citizenship itself. And with this bold move, Namibia was no longer simply investing in schools or diplomas. It was investing in the minds, ambitions, and futures of an entire generation that would now have the tools to transform the nation from within. However, of course, not everyone was convinced. The Affirmative Repositioning Student Command, ARSC, criticized the announcement as symbolic, without clear execution plans. They feared overcrowded lecture halls, resource shortages, and administrative bottlenecks. Economists like Tannen Gronewald raised alarms. With a potential surge in university enrollment, could Namibia's higher education system scale up fast enough without sacrificing quality? Would funding keep pace with demand? Could universities hire enough new professors, build new facilities, and update curricula in time? And then there was the missing middle problem. Would working-class students who aren't poor enough for additional aid still struggle to afford accommodation and living expenses? The questions were valid, and Namibia had few easy answers. Yet despite the skepticism, hope still outweighed fear. For President Nandi Ndaitwah, this wasn't just about politics. It was about survival and revival. She framed the policy as an economic necessity, not just a moral one. By unlocking education for all, she aims to break the cycle of generational poverty/youth unemployment, which had hovered dangerously near 40%, and cultivate a new class of innovators, engineers, teachers, and entrepreneurs. She wants to prepare Namibia's economy for new industries like green hydrogen, oil and gas, critical minerals, and technology. In short, education was no longer seen as a cost, but as the greatest investment Namibia could make. $1 spent today on education could save $10 tomorrow on welfare, crime prevention, and healthcare. A highly skilled, well-educated young workforce would not just fill jobs, it would create industries. Namibia wasn't just preparing its youth to join the 21st century economy, it was preparing them to lead it. Interestingly, the free university education announcement isn't an isolated move. It's the crown jewel of a much bigger, bolder economic transformation strategy. Namibia is rolling out an 85 billion Namibian dollars, or 4.5 billion US dollars economic master plan. This ensures 550,000 new jobs across energy, infrastructure, tech, and agriculture, and upgrades to vocational training centers with an 8 billion Namibian dollars modernization push. It also includes massive rural development programs, ensuring that opportunity is not confined to urban hubs like Windhoek and Swakopmund. Even the plan reaches energy sector expansions, preparing for Namibia's emerging green hydrogen industry, which alone could add tens of thousands of new skilled jobs. Education is now firmly linked to economic development. The government isn't just giving away degrees, it's laying the foundation for a national industrial rebirth. Now, if Namibia succeeds, it will become the first country in sub-Saharan Africa to offer truly free university education without collapsing its fiscal stability. It would show the world that free higher education isn't just a fantasy for wealthy nations. It's a strategic weapon against poverty, dependency, and underdevelopment. Already, eyes across Africa are turning toward Windhoek, with cautious optimism and growing admiration. At a time when politicians across the world seem deaf to the struggles of ordinary people, Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah listened. She didn't just campaign for change. She delivered it on one of the most fundamental, transformative issues of all: education. The road ahead will be hard, mistakes will be made, corrections will be needed. But for the first time in a generation, thousands of Namibian students can dream without debt standing in their way. They can look toward the future and see open doors, not locked gates. And that is a revolution far more powerful than any protest sign or social media hashtag could ever capture. What do you think about Namibia's new president making higher education free for all? Isn't it true that all African countries should do the same to ensure they have a highly educated and skilled young generation? In the comment section below, share your thoughts on the colonial system that provides education for only the wealthy, which Namibia's new president is changing. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If yes, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We bring videos on Black Africa, its history, rich arts and culture, and things the world should know about. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.